Most people believe crimes happen in darkness, unseen and unnoticed. They believe that once a door closes or a street empties, there are no witnesses left behind. But that belief is wrong. Somewhere above, in a corner, behind a glass lens that never blinks, a camera is watching everything. In this video, you're about to see real moments captured by CCTV footage, moments where killers thought they were completely alone. Unaware that every step, every pause, and every mistake was being silently recorded. What makes this footage so disturbing isn't just the violence, it's the confidence. The calm movements. The way these individuals behave when they believe no one is watching. They don't rush. They don't panic. Because in their minds, there are no eyes, no evidence, and no consequences. But the camera is already there, collecting proof that will later expose the truth they tried to hide. Tonight's cases are not reconstructions or dramatizations. They are real crimes, caught in real time, by cameras never meant to interfere, only to observe. Some of these recordings were overlooked for months. Others were dismissed as routine footage. But hidden inside these silent videos are details that changed investigations forever and led police directly to the killers. As you watch, pay attention to the smallest movements. A glance over the shoulder, a sudden pause, decision that seems meaningless in the moment but becomes crucial later. These are the seconds where everything unravels. Because when a killer doesn't know he's on camera, he reveals more than he ever intended. Viewer discretion is advised. What you're about to witness is unsettling, chilling, and impossible to forget. And remember, every camera you see tonight is a reminder that somewhere right now, another lens is quietly watching. Most people don't notice cameras anymore. They pass beneath them every day without a second glance. On street corners, inside apartment buildings, in parking garages, convenience stores, elevators, hallways, and quiet residential roads. These lenses remained fixed in place, silently recording lives as they unfold. They capture ordinary routines, people buying groceries, walking dogs, locking doors at night. But sometimes, without warning, they capture something far darker, something no one was ever meant to see. And when they do, the footage becomes more than just video. It becomes evidence. It becomes a witness. Sometimes, it becomes the reason a killer is finally exposed. The most disturbing part isn't the violence itself. It's what comes before it. The moments when everything seems normal, when the person on screen looks calm, relaxed, unbothered. They move without urgency, without fear. They don't hide their face. They don't rush, because in their mind, they are invisible. They believe there are no eyes watching, no record being made, no future consequences waiting for them. But somewhere above them, often unnoticed, the camera is already rolling. In tonight's stories, you will see real crimes captured by CCTV footage, edited moments where killers didn't know they were being watched. These aren't reenactments. They aren't dramatizations. They are real seconds frozen in time. Seconds that investigators would later rewind, pause, zoom into, and analyze frame by frame. At first glance, some of these clips look unremarkable. A person entering a building, a figure crossing a street, shadow moving through a hallway. But once you know what happens next, every second becomes unbearable to watch. In one case, the footage begins with an empty street late at night. The camera angle is poor, slightly tilted, and the quality is grainy. It's the kind of camera most people would assume is useless. Then a man enters the frame. He walks slowly, hands in his pockets, head down. He doesn't look around, doesn't hesitate. To anyone else, he's just another pedestrian. But investigators would later realize that what this camera captured was the last time a victim was seen alive, and the first mistake the killer ever made. What the camera doesn't capture is just as haunting as what it does. It doesn't record sound, doesn't show what happens behind closed doors. It doesn't explain intent. All it does is observe. And yet, that silent observation often reveals more truth than words ever could. A sudden change in body language, pause that lasts too long. It's a moment where someone turns back when they should have kept walking. These small details, unnoticed at first, later become impossible to ignore. Another case begins inside a residential building. The hallway is narrow, poorly lit, and completely empty. The camera has been there for years, installed after a series of minor thefts. No one ever expected it to capture something like this. A door opens. A man steps out. He checks his phone, adjusts his jacket, and walks down the hall. Minutes later, the same man returns, but this time, something is different. His posture has changed. His pace is slower. He avoids looking directly at the camera. At the time, no one noticed. The footage sat untouched for weeks. But when investigators finally reviewed it, they realized they were watching the exact moment everything went wrong. Killers often believe that crime is about control. Control over a situation, control over another person, control over whether they are seen or caught. But CCTV footage strips the control away. It records without emotion, without bias, without fear. It doesn't care who you are or what you think you've planned. It captures the truth as it happens, even when that truth is uncomfortable, confusing, or horrifying. In several of these cases, the footage was dismissed at first. Police had no suspect, no clear timeline, no reason to believe the camera had captured anything useful. Hours of video went unwatched. Days turned into weeks. But eventually, someone noticed something small. A figure appearing twice in places they shouldn't have. A car entering a parking lot and leaving too quickly. A person walking one direction and never coming back. And once that thread was pulled, everything began to unravel. There is a chilling pattern that repeats itself across these cases. The killers don't act like villains. They don't look dangerous. Some smile, some wave at neighbors. Some even glance directly at the camera, completely unaware of what it will later represent. This is what makes the footage so unsettling. It reminds us that evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks calmly into frame, blending in perfectly with the world around it. As the video progresses, you'll notice how investigators rely on these silent witnesses. They replay moments repeatedly, searching for meaning in movements that once seemed insignificant. A hand entering a pocket, a head turning slightly, a step that hesitates for half a second. These are the moments where stories change, where assumptions collapse, where truth begins to emerge. In one particularly disturbing case, the camera captures a man waiting. He stands near the entrance of a store long after it closes. He checks the street. He looks at his watch. He appears impatient but not nervous. When the victim finally enters the frame, nothing seems wrong. There's no struggle, no visible threat. It's just two people walking out of view. The camera continues recording an empty sidewalk. Minutes pass, and the man returns alone, calm, unrushed, as if nothing has happened. It would take months before investigators realized this was the last confirmed footage of the victim alive. What makes these cases even more haunting is the realization that many of these crimes could have gone unsolved. If the camera angle had been slightly different, if the footage had been overwritten, if no one had thought to check it. Justice often hinges on something as fragile as a hard drive, a timestamp, or a forgotten security system no one remembers to turn off. As you continue watching, the footage becomes harder to sit through. Not because it becomes more graphic, but because you understand what you're seeing. You know that the person on screen doesn't realize they're leaving behind a trail. You know that every step they take is being recorded. You know that eventually someone will watch this footage knowing exactly what it means. The camera never intervenes. It never warns. It never stops what's about to happen. It simply records. And in doing so, it captures the moments killers never expected anyone to see, the moments they believed would disappear forever. The footage continues, often without context, and that's what makes it so unsettling. A camera doesn't explain what came before or what will happen after. It only shows you what exists within its narrow frame. A doorway, a hallway, a stretch of road. And yet within these limits, entire stories unfold. Investigators often describe the first time they watch footage like this as confusing rather than shocking. Nothing immediately stands out. No obvious crime. No dramatic moment. Just people moving through space. It's only later, after timelines are established and facts emerge, that the footage transforms into something horrifying. In one case, a small convenience store camera records a man entering just before midnight. He browses the aisles slowly, picking up items, putting them back, wasting time. The cashier barely looks up. There's nothing threatening about him. When he finally leaves, the camera captures him pausing outside, standing just beyond the door, out of view of anyone inside. He remains there for several minutes. When the next customer arrives, the camera catches the man stepping back into frame, following them inside. The footage cuts off shortly after. What happened next wasn't captured, but investigators would later realize this waiting was deliberate. A decision was made in those silent minutes, unseen by anyone except the camera. Another case unfolds in a parking garage. The lighting flickers. Shadows stretch across concrete pillars. The car pulls in and parks far from the entrance, where the camera coverage is weakest. The driver gets out and walks toward the stairwell. He doesn't notice the camera mounted above, partially obscured by a support beam. The footage shows him pacing, checking his phone repeatedly. Then another car enters. A woman steps out. She walks past him without hesitation. Seconds later, the man follows. The camera captures both figures disappearing into the stairwell. Only one returns. The footage ends there. For weeks, the clip sat archived, unreviewed, until a missing persons report forced investigators to retrace every step of the victim's last known movements. What becomes clear across these cases is how often killers underestimate routine systems. Cameras are background noise to them, something meant for theft prevention, not serious crimes. Many assume the footage is low quality, never checked, or overwritten too quickly to matter. And sometimes they're right. But sometimes all it takes is one angle, one timestamp, one moment of clarity for everything to fall apart. There are cases where the killer even appears to test the camera without realizing it, walking back and forth, standing just at the edge of the frame, turning their heads slightly, as if sensing something but never fully acknowledging it. In one particularly chilling clip, a man stops directly beneath a camera, lights a cigarette, and looks straight up, not at the lens, but somewhere near it. His eyes pass over the camera without recognition. That single frame would later be used in court, enlarged and sharpened, becoming one of the clearest images of the suspect available. Time behaves strangely in CCTV footage. Moments stretch longer than they should. Ordinary actions feel weighted with meaning. A person tying their shoes becomes unbearable to watch when you know what happens minutes later. Investigators often say the hardest part, isn't watching the crime, it's watching the calm before it. The normalcy, the routine. Because it reminds you that the outcome wasn't inevitable. There were seconds where things could have gone differently. Seconds where a choice was made. In several cases, the footage captures the aftermath rather than the act itself. A figure emerging from a building alone, a car leaving at an unusual speed. Someone discarding clothing in a dumpster, glancing around quickly before walking away. These are the moments that raise questions. Why did they return alone? Why did they leave in such a hurry? Why did they come back at all? Each question sends investigators deeper into the footage, scanning earlier frames, earlier days, earlier movements. One of the most haunting patterns is how ordinary the surroundings are. These crimes don't happen in isolated, dramatic locations. They happen in places people pass through every day. Apartment complexes, grocery store parking lots, office buildings after hours, spaces designed for routine, not violence. And that familiarity makes the footage harder to process. You recognize the setting? You've been there before. You've walked through similar hallways without ever thinking about who might be watching or who might be acting when no one else is. As the investigation unfolds, the footage often becomes the backbone of the case. Timelines are built around it. Alibis are tested against it. Statements are compared to what the camera shows. This is where killers begin to lose control, because memory can lie, people can lie, but the footage remains unchanged. A timestamp doesn't argue. A frame doesn't forget. In one case, a suspect insisted he left a building at a certain time. He was confident, calm, convincing. But the CCTV footage told a different story. It showed him exiting nearly an hour later, carrying something he hadn't mentioned. When confronted with the footage, his demeanor changed instantly. The calm vanished. The confidence collapsed. In that moment, the camera stopped being a silent observer and became an undeniable witness. Sometimes the footage reveals something even more disturbing. Hesitation. A killer pausing, pacing, walking away, then returning. These moments suggest internal conflict, doubt, fear, and yet they also show resolve forming. Watching these moments feels invasive, like witnessing thoughts that were never meant to be shared. The camera captures the moment where intent becomes action. There are cases where the footage is discovered years later. Old systems upgraded, forgotten hard drives reviewed, cold cases reopened. In these moments, the camera reaches across time, pulling the past into the present. Faces long forgotten reappear on screen. Movements once ignored suddenly become crucial. And justice, delayed but not erased, finally begins to move. As you watch these stories unfold, it becomes impossible to ignore the central truth they all share. Killers act differently when they believe they are unseen. They reveal themselves not through violence alone, but through behavior, through confidence, through carelessness, and through the assumption that no one is paying attention. But the camera is always paying attention. It doesn't care about motive. It doesn't feel fear. It doesn't look away. It simply records. In doing so, it captures the moments killers never expected anyone to see, the moments that prove they were never as invisible as they believed. And as this footage continues to surface, one frame at a time, it leaves behind an uncomfortable question. How many moments like these have already been recorded? And how many more are being captured right now by cameras no one is thinking about, waiting silently to reveal the truth when the time comes? Subscribe for more true crime stories where killers thought they were unseen and paid the price for it.